When people look back on the life of Terence Stamp, remembered as one of Britain's finest actors, they see not just the striking eyes and unforgettable voice, but the arc of a man who lived with intensity, elegance, and a touch of mystery. Born in Stepney, London, in 1938, Stamp rose from modest beginnings to become one of the defining screen presences of the 1960s and beyond. His early performances in films such as Billy Budd earned him critical acclaim, and soon he was considered one of the most magnetic actors of his generation. Handsome and enigmatic, he became part of the cultural fabric of the swinging 60s, his image gracing magazines and film posters alike. But his career was never about superficial fame. It was about bringing complexity to every character he touched, whether a vulnerable hero, a dangerous villain, or a tragic figure caught between two worlds. What made Terence Stamp enduring, however, was not only his work, but also his personal journey. He was someone who constantly reinvented himself, who stepped away from the limelight when he felt the need for solitude, and who embraced different stages of life with courage. After his initial stardom in the 1960s and 70s, he endured years when Hollywood seemed to pass him by, yet he returned stronger than ever in later decades, most memorably with performances in The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and as General Zod in the Superman films. To younger audiences, he was the embodiment of regal menace and wisdom, yet to his contemporaries, he remained the daring young man who once shook British cinema. His private life, often the subject of speculation, was marked by passion and intensity. Among the most significant chapters of his story was his marriage to Elizabeth O'Rourke. Their relationship, though brief in the grand scale of his long life, carried its own meaning. Elizabeth, who once shared in his world of travel, red carpets, and quiet moments away from the cameras, has offered words that now carry special weight in the shadow of his passing. "We may have taken different paths," she once reflected, "but the years we shared gave me a window into a soul both brilliant and restless." Those words, paraphrased now as her tribute, remind the world that beyond the fame, there was a man who sought love, belonging, and understanding. The marriage between Terence and Elizabeth eventually ended, as many do, because the demands of a restless spirit and the pressures of a public life proved too heavy to reconcile with private needs. They had no children together, and perhaps that absence of a shared anchor made their parting inevitable. Yet what Elizabeth emphasizes in her tribute is not the fracture, but the memory of what was genuine between them. "We laughed, we dreamed, we clashed, but we cared," she admitted, capturing the contradictions of a union between two strong personalities. The separation, though difficult, was less about bitterness and more about acknowledging that love sometimes takes its course and then transforms into something different. In later years, Elizabeth lived her life quietly, while Terence continued to act, write, and pursue his philosophies, but the thread of memory remained unbroken. His family, especially his siblings and close circle of friends, always formed a backbone of stability for him. He had grown up close to his brother Chris, who later became the manager of The Who, and together they had shared the vibrancy and chaos of London's cultural explosion. That background of family loyalty gave Terence a grounding he carried into every stage of his career, even when fame threatened to sweep him too far from his roots. Those who knew him personally often remarked on his generosity of spirit, his willingness to mentor younger actors, and his habit of pausing in the middle of conversations to reflect deeply before answering, a trait that made him feel both profound and elusive. Elizabeth's words today shock many, not because they come from bitterness, but because they come from an honesty few expected. She chooses to highlight not the glamour, but the human being behind it. She speaks of a man who could be both tender and stubborn, charming and distant, and who always seemed to live slightly apart from the ordinary world. Her tribute frames Terence not as a perfect partner, but as an unforgettable soul who left an imprint on everyone close to him. It is a reminder that great actors are not only remembered by audiences, but also by the quiet, personal stories of those who once shared their lives. As the world mourns Terence Stamp, the tributes pour in from colleagues, fans, and film institutions, but Elizabeth's voice adds a layer of intimacy to the public grief. It reminds us that behind the accolades and applause was a man who loved, lost, and searched for meaning like anyone else. In remembering him, we celebrate not only the roles he played on screen, but the fuller portrait of a man who embraced both triumph and imperfection. His passing closes the chapter on a career that spanned more than 6 decades, but the echo of his voice, the flash of his eyes, and the memory of his presence will linger in the cultural imagination forever. To those who watched him on screen, he was unforgettable. To Elizabeth, he was once the man she called her own. And in that intersection lies the most poignant truth of all, that even legends are, at heart, human beings who love, stumble, and leave behind memories that outlive them.